Welcome back to Health Storytellers, a space where we don't just talk about diets and reps, but about the deeper narratives that shape our well-being. I'm your host. Today, we're flipping the script. For so long, the journey to a healthier weight has been framed as a process of addition. Add more exercise, add more salads, add more discipline. But what if the real transformation begins not with what you start, but with what you stop? What if the clutter in your mind and habits is the very thing holding you back? This isn't a story about deprivation in the usual sense. It's a story about liberation, about creating space in your thoughts, your routines, and your heart for the change you seek to truly take root. So, find a comfortable space, perhaps pour a cup of tea, and join me for a different kind of conversation. We're about to explore 7 things you must quit to see real results on your weight loss journey. Before we begin, here is the map for our journey today. The journey toward a healthier weight is one of the most universally shared, yet profoundly personal narratives of our time. It is a story etched into our cultural consciousness, often framed as a hero's quest, a battle against temptation, a test of willpower, a relentless pursuit of a distant goal. For decades, the dominant dialogue surrounding this journey has been one of addition, of accumulation. We are instructed to add more minutes to our workouts, more grams of protein to our plates, more apps to track our progress, and more sheer determination to our daily lives. The underlying premise is that by stacking enough of these external actions and restrictions, we will eventually arrive at our desired destination. However, there exists a parallel narrative, one whispered by those who have found lasting success not through relentless addition, but through thoughtful, deliberate subtraction. This is the story not of building a fortress of rules, but of clearing a path through a dense forest of mental clutter, inherited beliefs, and unsustainable practices. The initial and often most transformative phase of real change is not about what you begin, but about what you conclude. It is about creating psychic and emotional space so that new, healthier patterns are not choked out by the weeds of old paradigms. The weight we carry is not always physical. It is frequently the weight of outdated stories we tell ourselves about discipline, worth, and progress. Consider the common experience of embarking on a new regimen with fervent enthusiasm. The first days are marked by pristine adherence, the meticulously logged meals, the intense gym sessions, the triumphant resistance of cravings. This phase is often fueled by a powerful yet finite resource, motivation. But motivation, by its very nature, is a transient state. When life inevitably intrudes with its deadlines, its social obligations, its stresses and surprises, the rigid structure of a plan built solely on addition is often the first thing to fracture. A missed workout or a forbidden meal is not seen as a minor deviation in a long journey. It is interpreted through a lens of personal failing, as evidence that the plan has been broken and therefore must be abandoned. This is the cycle of initiation and attrition that characterizes so many weight loss narratives, leaving in its wake frustration and a reinforced belief that the goal is unattainable. This cyclical pattern suggests a fundamental flaw in the foundational approach. If the process itself is psychologically taxing, internally punitive, and emotionally draining, no amount of initial results can sustain it. The human mind and spirit will inevitably seek relief from such austerity. Therefore, the critical pivot point lies in shifting the focus from the external mechanics of weight loss to the internal architecture that supports it. Lasting change is less about the mathematics of calories and more about the metaphysics of self-perception. It is about editing the internal script from one of conflict and deprivation to one of alignment and nourishment. The act of quitting in this context is not an admission of defeat. It is an assertion of strategy. It is the conscious, courageous decision to stop investing energy in thoughts and behaviors that yield diminishing or negative returns. Each item we choose to quit represents a liberation of cognitive and emotional resources that can then be redirected toward constructive, sustainable actions. It moves the journey from a state of constant striving, a tense white-knuckled grip on control, to a state of allowing, of creating the conditions under which health can naturally flourish. This series explores 7 such liberations. These are not tactical dietary swaps or exercise prescriptions. They are foundational mindset shifts. They address the silent saboteurs that operate from within, often unnoticed. We will examine the tyranny of the binary, all or nothing thinking, that turns minor missteps into catastrophes. We will challenge the culturally ingrained obsession with a single impersonal number on a scale, reclaiming the narrative of progress from a cold metric and returning it to the lived sensory experience of the body. We will deconstruct the moral framework we so often impose upon food, which transforms eating from a source of nourishment and pleasure into a courtroom drama of guilt and innocence. Furthermore, we will confront the thief of joy that is comparison, which derails us by forcing our unique, nonlinear story into unfair competition with the curated highlights of others. We will expose the subtle trap of the tomorrow mindset, a procrastination of self-care that perpetually defers agency and reinforces powerlessness in the present moment. We will reframe physical movement from a punitive transaction, a payment for dietary sins, to a celebratory dialogue with the body's inherent capacity for strength and joy. Finally, and most crucially, we will journey inward to locate the source of our motivation, moving it from the unstable ground of external validation to the solid bedrock of intrinsic personal purpose. Embarking on this path of quitting requires a redefinition of strength. In a culture that prizes relentless doing, the strength to stop, to release, to quiet a counterproductive voice is a profound and underrated form of power. It is the power of editing your own story. This process creates the quiet, resilient space where real, tangible results can finally take root and grow. It is the difference between building on sand and building on bedrock. The following chapters provide a map for this excavation, guiding you to clear away what no longer serves you, so that the health, vitality, and peace you seek have room to breathe, to expand, and to become your lasting new reality. The journey of sustainable transformation requires a fundamental reorientation in how we perceive progress, measure success, and relate to the very fuel that sustains us. This phase of the process involves 3 critical mental shifts that dismantle the rigid, often punitive frameworks that frequently lead to disengagement. By quitting these deeply ingrained patterns, we replace judgment with curiosity and external metrics with internal wisdom. Quitting the all-or-nothing mentality, the power of consistent imperfection. The first and perhaps most pervasive obstacle to lasting change is the all-or-nothing mentality, a cognitive distortion also known as dichotomous or black-and-white thinking. In the context of health and weight management, this manifests as a rigid, perfectionist script. One must either follow a prescribed plan with flawless execution or consider the effort a total failure. This mindset constructs a narrative where any deviation from a strict, self-imposed protocol, a dessert chosen at a celebration, a missed workout due to fatigue, a day of less than ideal food choices, is interpreted not as a minor plot point in a long story, but as a catastrophic rupture that voids all previous effort. The internal monologue follows a predictable, destructive path. I've already ruined my diet, so I might as well abandon it entirely for the rest of the day, week. This psychological pattern is profoundly limiting for several reasons. First, it places an unsustainable burden on willpower, a finite resource that is heavily influenced by stress, sleep, and emotional state. Relying on perfect adherence ignores the dynamic, fluctuating nature of human life and biology. Second, it eliminates the vast, fertile middle ground where genuine, long-term progress is actually cultivated. By framing choices as only perfect or failed, it disregards the immense value of the good enough, the mostly on track, or the getting back to it. Third, it establishes a cycle of initiation, inevitable lapse, self-recrimination, and abandonment, which erodes self-trust and reinforces a narrative of personal inadequacy. The liberation lies in quitting this binary framework and embracing a philosophy of nonlinear progression and aggregate consistency. This shift is supported by behavioral science, which demonstrates that flexibility and self-compassion are far more predictive of long-term adherence than rigid perfectionism. Research in the field of health psychology indicates that individuals who practice adaptive responses to lapses, viewing them as temporary setbacks rather than definitive failures, are significantly more likely to re-engage with their goals successfully. To operationalize this shift, one must consciously reframe the narrative. Instead of evaluating a day as a success or failure based on a perfect scorecard, the focus turns to the identification and acknowledgement of positive actions, however small. This is the practice of stringing pearls, collecting and valuing each individual healthy choice as a precious bead, with the understanding that together, over time, they form a complete and beautiful strand. Did you choose a vegetable with your lunch? That is a pearl. Did you take a 10-minute walk instead of scrolling through your phone? That is a pearl. Did you prioritize an additional hour of sleep? That too is a pearl. The goal is no longer an unbroken chain of perfect days, but a collection of more positive choices than negative ones over the weeks and months. This approach cultivates resilience, as a single off meal or missed gym session becomes an insignificant event in a much larger tapestry of effort, rather than a thread that unravels the entire cloth. 2. Quitting the scale obsession. Reclaiming the narrative of progress. For many, the primary and often solitary metric of progress is the number displayed on a bathroom scale. This weekly or daily ritual can become a source of significant anxiety, with emotional states rising and falling in direct correlation with decimal points. While tracking weight can provide one piece of objective data, an obsession with this single metric is a profound error in narrative focus. It reduces the complex, multifaceted story of physiological and psychological transformation to a single, often misleading data point. The scale tells an incomplete and frequently frustrating story because it measures the sum total of everything in the body at that moment: bone, muscle, organs, water, glycogen stores, and digestive contents. It cannot distinguish between fat loss, which is typically the goal, and the loss of water weight or, detrimentally, lean muscle mass. Conversely, it cannot indicate the gain of metabolically active muscle tissue, which may occur with a new exercise regimen, potentially masking fat loss on the scale. Fluctuations of several pounds from day to day are normal and are primarily related to hydration, sodium intake, hormonal cycles, and digestive rhythm, not to changes in body fat. To grant this number ultimate authority is to outsource one's sense of accomplishment and self-worth to a device that is incapable of capturing the most meaningful aspects of health. Therefore, quitting scale obsession involves democratizing the measures of success. It requires expanding the dashboard of progress to include a suite of non-scale victories, NSVs. These are qualitative and quantitative indicators that often provide more accurate and motivating feedback on the true benefits of lifestyle changes. This expanded narrative includes biometric improvements, measurable changes in blood pressure, resting heart rate, cholesterol panels, or blood sugar stability, performance metrics, increases in strength, lifting heavier weights, endurance, running farther or longer, flexibility, or recovery speed, sensory and functional feedback, how clothes fit differently, the emergence of muscle definition, increased energy levels throughout the day, improved sleep quality, sharper mental clarity, and a greater sense of vitality. Behavioral and psychological shifts, the development of new habits such as craving vegetables, finding enjoyment in movement, practicing mindful eating, or experiencing reduced anxiety around food choices. When the scale's narrative is relegated to one of many data points, reviewed perhaps monthly rather than daily, it loses its oppressive power. The individual becomes the author of their progress story, weaving together chapters on improved fitness, better sleep, clearer skin, and stronger well-being. The journey transforms from a grim pursuit of a lower number to a holistic exploration of feeling and functioning better in one's own body. 3. Quitting the good food versus bad food war, from morality to nourishment. A third pervasive mental model that requires quitting is the moral categorization of food. This is the linguistic and psychological framework that labels foods as good, clean, healthy, or bad, junk, cheat. This paradigm imbues eating with a moral valence, where choosing a kale salad is an act of virtue, and choosing a piece of cake is an act of transgression. This language, common in diet culture, has profound psychological consequences. Labeling food as bad creates a forbidden fruit effect, often increasing its desirability and triggering rebellious eating. When one inevitably consumes a bad food, the associated feelings of guilt and shame can trigger a psychological cascade known as the "what the hell" effect, where the individual, feeling they have already broken their rules, proceeds to overconsume, reasoning that the day is already ruined. Furthermore, this moral framework severs the connection between food and its legitimate roles beyond mere physical fuel: pleasure, cultural tradition, social bonding, and emotional comfort. It turns eating into a constant test of moral fortitude. The liberation comes from quitting this language of judgment and adopting a framework of neutrality, context, and purpose. This is often described as moving from a dieting mindset to an intuitive eating or mindful nourishment mindset. In this new paradigm, food is not moral, it is functional and experiential. The evaluation shifts from "is this food good or bad?" to more nuanced questions. What purpose is this food serving for me right now? How will it make my body feel? Does it provide the nutrients I need? Does it bring me pleasure or connection? Foods can be understood on a spectrum from everyday foods to sometimes foods, based on their nutrient density, the concentration of vitamins, minerals, fiber, and protein relative to their caloric content. Leafy greens, lean proteins, and whole grains are everyday foods that form the nutritional foundation for health and energy. A piece of birthday cake, a serving of French fries, or a cocktail are sometimes foods that serve primary purposes of celebration, sensory pleasure, or social ritual. Neither is bad. They simply serve different functions. By removing morality from the equation, one can approach all foods with mindfulness and intention. One can enjoy a sometimes food fully and without guilt, recognizing its purpose in the moment, and then seamlessly return to everyday foods at the next meal. This creates a peaceful, sustainable relationship with food, ending the cycle of restriction and rebellion. It allows nutrition to become a form of self-care rather than self-punishment, where choices are made from a place of respect for the body's needs and joys, not from fear of breaking arbitrary rules. This psychological piece is the cornerstone of any dietary pattern that can be maintained for a lifetime, not just for the duration of a temporary plan. Having addressed the internal frameworks of perfectionism and judgment, the transformative journey must next confront two external and temporal saboteurs: the habit of measuring oneself against others and the act of deferring one's own agency to an imagined future. These liberations are about reclaiming ownership of your unique path and of your present moment. They shift the locus of control from outside influences and distant promises back to the individual, empowering action grounded in self-awareness and immediacy. IV. Quitting comparison, honoring the uniqueness of your narrative. In an era of ubiquitous digital media, the psychological trap of social comparison has become a near constant undercurrent in the pursuit of health and fitness. Platforms showcase curated highlight reels, the dramatic before and after transformations, the impeccably arranged what I eat in a day videos, the feats of athleticism performed in pristine home gyms. This constant exposure creates a powerful, often unconscious benchmark against which individuals measure their own progress. When one's lived reality, a process marked by non-linear progress, unseen struggles, and private efforts, is juxtaposed against another's polished finale, the result is often a profound sense of inadequacy, discouragement, and impatience. The act of comparison in this context is fundamentally flawed because it is inherently inequitable. It involves comparing one's own complete unfiltered reality, including doubts, setbacks, and mundane daily choices, to a selectively edited representation of another person's experience. It ignores the vast array of confounding variables that make each health journey distinct: genetic predispositions, metabolic history, lifestyle constraints, socioeconomic factors, underlying health conditions, and personal psychological makeup. To compare your day 3 to someone else's day 300 is a categorical error. They are entirely different chapters in completely different books. Furthermore, comparison functions as a thief of intrinsic motivation. When the primary gauge of progress becomes how one stacks up against peers or influencers, the focus shifts from internal signals, how one feels, what one needs, to external validation. This can lead to adopting extreme or unsuitable protocols simply because they worked for someone else, disregarding whether they are sustainable, enjoyable, or physiologically appropriate for oneself. The pursuit becomes about catching up to or mimicking an external ideal, rather than nurturing an internal state of well-being. The liberation lies in a conscious, deliberate pivot from comparison to context. This involves a twofold practice: internal benchmarking and narrative reframing. First, one must develop the discipline of internal benchmarking. This means that the most relevant and meaningful point of comparison is your own past self. Progress is measured longitudinally, not laterally. Constructive questions replace envious glances. Can I walk farther without fatigue than I could a month ago? Do I have more energy in the afternoons? Has my relationship with food become less stressful? Am I sleeping more soundly? These questions anchor the journey in personal, tangible evidence of improvement that no external image can invalidate. Second, it requires a narrative reframing of the journey itself. Instead of viewing it as a competitive race along a single track toward a uniform finish line, one must reconceptualize it as the authorship of a personal monograph. Your health story is a unique document with its own background, challenges, pivotal experiments, results, and conclusions. Another person's story is a separate volume in the library of human experience. It may offer interesting references or inspiration, but it is not the template for your work. Your energy is best invested in conducting your own research, writing your own chapters, and refining your own argument for a healthier life. This mindset fosters self-compassion, patience, and a deep respect for the individuality of the process. V. Quitting the tomorrow mindset. The sovereignty of the present moment. Closely linked to the pitfalls of comparison is the seductive, self-deceptive trap of the tomorrow mindset. This is the cognitive pattern of perpetually postponing the initiation or recommitment to healthful behaviors to an abstract future point in time. Its mantras are familiar and culturally tolerated. I'll start on Monday. After the holidays, I'll get serious. When this stressful project is over, I'll have time to cook and exercise. Once I have a better kitchen, better gym clothes, more money, then I'll begin. This mindset is psychologically pernicious because it performs a dual function. It provides temporary relief from the anxiety of needing to change while simultaneously reinforcing a narrative of powerlessness in the present. It operates on the fallacy that future circumstances will be magically more conducive to effort, and that future you will be a person of greater willpower, organization, and motivation than present you. It externalizes agency, making it contingent upon external conditions aligning perfectly. The profound flaw in this logic is that tomorrow is a hypothetical construct. When it arrives, it is experienced as today, yet it often carries with it a new set of circumstances, stresses, and temptations. The goalposts of readiness continually shift, creating a cycle of indefinite postponement. This reinforces a latent identity of someone who intends to be healthy, but never actually is healthy, because the action is always located just beyond the horizon of the current moment. Quitting this mindset is an exercise in reclaiming personal sovereignty and agency in the present. It is the understanding that the only time over which one has any direct influence is now. This does not necessitate a dramatic, overwhelming overhaul of one's entire life starting this instant. In fact, that expectation is often what fuels the tomorrow delay. The perceived magnitude of the change feels too daunting to face. The effective strategy is the deliberate cultivation of micro-actions and identity-based decisions. Drawn from the principles of behavioral psychology and habit formation, this approach bypasses the need for vast reservoirs of future motivation by focusing on minuscule, non-negotiable actions in the present. The question shifts from the overwhelming, "Can I transform my entire lifestyle today?" to the manageable, "What is one small, healthy action I can take right now that is aligned with the person I wish to become?" This might mean drinking a full glass of water upon waking. It could mean taking a 5-minute walk after lunch. It might involve choosing to include one vegetable with dinner tonight, or preparing tomorrow's breakfast before going to bed. Each of these actions, however trivial it may seem, is a powerful declarative statement. As articulated by James Clear in Atomic Habits, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to be. You are not waiting to become a healthy person in the future. You are being a healthy person in this specific present tense choice. A person who values their health drinks water now. A person who values their strength takes a walk now. These small votes, accumulated over time, compound into an undeniable electoral victory for a new identity. By quitting the tomorrow mindset, you dismantle the illusion that change happens in a single future leap. You reconstruct it as a series of present moment steps. You reclaim the power that was always yours, the power to choose, in this very moment, a single action that moves the narrative one sentence forward. The journey ceases to be a distant destination and becomes the very path you are walking, one deliberate, present footstep at a time. The final phase of this foundational work addresses the very nature of our actions and their source of fuel. We move from how we think and measure to how we do and why we do it. This involves transforming the character of physical exertion from a penance into a privilege, and shifting the motivational engine of the entire endeavor from outside approval to an internal, enduring purpose. These are the liberations that ensure the journey is not only sustainable, but also joyful and self-directed. VE, quitting punishment exercise, reclaiming movement as dialogue and celebration. For many, the concept of exercise is inextricably linked into the arithmetic of weight management, framed as a compensatory transaction. The mental equation is straightforward. Calories consumed must be offset by calories expended. This transactional view gives rise to the language of punishment. I need to burn off that meal. I have to work out to earn this dessert. Or, I was bad this weekend, so I must punish myself with an extra hard session. In this narrative, the body is cast as a debtor, physical activity as the repayment, and the gym or running path as a court of atonement. This paradigm is fundamentally flawed on psychological, physiological, and motivational grounds. Psychologically, it associates movement with guilt, obligation, and self-flagellation, stripping it of any inherent pleasure or value. It creates a resentment toward the very activity that is capable of producing profound benefits for mood, cognition, and longevity. Physiologically, it often encourages excessive, unsustainable bouts of high-intensity exertion that increase the risk of injury and burnout, rather than promoting consistent, moderate activity that the body can adapt to and thrive upon. Motivationally, it tethers the reason for movement to a negative trigger, a dietary transgression, making it a reactive, unpleasant chore rather than a proactive, positive choice. To quit punishment exercise is to undergo a profound reframing of the mind-body relationship. It involves shifting from viewing the body as an object to be disciplined, a recalcitrant machine that must be forced into compliance, to experiencing it as a subject with which to engage, a dynamic partner in the journey of living. Movement ceases to be a sentence and becomes a dialogue, an exploration, and a celebration. This reframing requires a return to first principles, asking what forms of physical activity bring a sense of engagement, joy, or fulfillment, independent of their caloric cost. The objective is to discover movement that is intrinsically rewarding. This is a highly personal inquiry. For some, it may be found in the rhythmic, meditative state of long-distance running or cycling. For others, it may be the skill acquisition and flow of rock climbing, dance, or martial arts. It could be the social connection of a team sport, the mindful alignment of yoga or Pilates, or the simple, restorative practice of walking in nature. The critical metric shifts from how many calories did I burn or how much did I suffer to how did that make me feel and did I enjoy any aspect of that experience. The goal becomes functional vitality, increasing your body's capacity to engage fully with your life, whether that means carrying groceries with ease, playing actively with children or grandchildren, hiking on a vacation without pain, or simply possessing the energy and resilience to navigate daily demands. When movement is reclaimed as a celebration of capability, it becomes self-reinforcing. The positive feedback is no longer just a smaller number on a scale, which is unreliable, but the tangible feeling of strength growing, endurance expanding, stiffness fading, and mood elevating. The gym is no longer a courthouse. It is a laboratory or a playground. The run is not a penance. It is a moving meditation or an exploration of the neighborhood. This shift is essential for creating a lifelong relationship with activity, one that is chosen for its gifts, not endured for its punishments. Visipt, quitting the search for external validation, cultivating an intrinsic why. The final and perhaps most profound liberation is the internalization of motivation. The journey is often initiated by a desire for external validation, to look a certain way for an event, to receive compliments, to fit a societal ideal, or to meet the expectations of others. While these can be powerful initial catalysts, they are unstable and insufficient foundations for lasting change. External validation is ephemeral, Compliments fade, events pass, and societal ideals shift. When the primary why is located outside the self, the entire structure becomes vulnerable to the opinions and attention of others. A plateau becomes demoralizing not because of the physiological stall, but because no one is noticing progress anymore. A lack of commentary can feel like a failure. This pursuit of external approval creates a performance-based identity where self-worth becomes contingent upon the perceived success of the health journey as judged by an external audience. This is psychologically precarious and can lead to behaviors aimed at optimizing for appearance rather than health, or to a deep sense of emptiness when the desired validation is achieved but fails to deliver the promised fulfillment. The transformative quit, therefore, is the abandonment of this external locus of evaluation and the conscious cultivation of an intrinsic, purpose-driven why. This involves a deep, reflective inquiry to unearth motivations that are personal, meaningful, and divorced from the opinions of others. The questions must move from the superficial to the fundamental, from do I want to look better to do I want to feel stronger and more capable in my daily life? From do I want to fit into smaller clothes to do I want the vitality to fully engage with my passions, my family, and my adventures for years to come? From do I want others to see me as disciplined to do I want to cultivate self-respect through consistent, caring choices for my own well-being? This intrinsic why often connects to core values such as autonomy, competence, connection, or legacy. It might be, I want to be an active present parent. I want to manage my health to avoid medication. I want to honor my body as the instrument through which I experience my life. I want to age with independence and grace. I want to model a healthy relationship with food and body for my children. An internal why provides a North Star that is constant and unassailable. It fuels perseverance through plateaus because the goal is not a visual change that others might miss, but a functional or experiential quality that you feel directly. It allows you to celebrate private victories with genuine satisfaction. It transforms the journey from a performance for an audience into a personal project of self-actualization. When motivation is intrinsic, setbacks are viewed as learning opportunities rather than public failures. Choices are made from a place of self-care and long-term alignment, not from a desire for short-term praise. The individual becomes the ultimate authority on their own progress, and the journey gains a depth and resilience that no amount of external applause could ever provide. This is the liberation that ties all others together. The freedom to pursue health for your own reasons, on your own terms, guided by your own values. It is the moment you stop acting in a story written by others and begin authoring your own. Having traversed the landscape of these 7 deliberate liberations, we arrive not at a finish line, but at a new beginning. This final section serves as an integrative synthesis, weaving together the individual threads of what we have quit to reveal the stronger, more resilient fabric of what we have cultivated in their place. It is here that we shift from deconstruction to reconstruction, from letting go to embracing the emergent narrative that these choices make possible. The journey ceases to be a series of difficult subtractions and reveals itself as a profound act of creating space, the psychological, emotional, and behavioral space required for authentic, lasting change to take root and flourish. Synthesis, the architecture of a sustainable mindset. The 7 quits are not isolated tactics. They are interdependent pillars of a coherent, sustainable mindset. Each liberation supports and reinforces the others, creating a stable architecture for long-term well-being. When we quit the all-or-nothing mentality, we grant ourselves permission to be human. This self-compassion is the fertile ground in which the seeds of new habits can grow without being scorched by the harsh sun of perfectionism. This flexibility directly enables us to quit punishment exercise, as a missed workout is no longer a failure, but a data point, allowing us to choose restorative movement instead of forced penance. Quitting the scale obsession and comparison redirects our attention inward, a necessary precondition for quitting the search for external validation. By ceasing to measure our worth by external metrics or against others' highlights, we are forced to develop an internal compass. This naturally leads us to define our own intrinsic why, a purpose that is immune to the fluctuating opinions of the outside world. Furthermore, quitting the good food versus bad food war dismantles a major source of internal conflict and shame. This piece liberates cognitive resources and emotional energy that can now be invested in the present moment, making it easier to quit the tomorrow mindset. When food is no longer a moral battlefield, the anxiety that drives procrastination, "I'll start eating clean tomorrow," diminishes. We can make a neutral, positive choice now because it aligns with our goal of nourishment, not because we fear being bad. Thus, the process forms a virtuous cycle. Letting go of comparison. Quit number 4 builds self-trust, which makes consistency, the antidote to quit number 1, easier. Finding joyful movement. Quit number 6 provides intrinsic rewards that strengthen our internal why. Quit number 7, making us less vulnerable to scale-related discouragement. Quit number 2. This interconnectedness means that progress in one area creates positive momentum in all others. The emergent narrative, from weight loss to life expansion. When these 7 burdens are lifted, what narrative fills the space they once occupied? The story fundamentally transforms. It is no longer a singular grinding epic entitled The War on My Body. It evolves into a multifaceted, ongoing chronicle best described as the cultivation of a capable and connected life. In this new story, the protagonist is not a struggling dieter, but an active author and experimenter. The central theme shifts from restriction to invigoration. The primary question is no longer, what must I deny myself, but what can I add to my life in terms of energy, strength, peace, and pleasure? The goal is not to become smaller, but to become more resilient, more vibrant, more engaged. This narrative is inherently more sustainable because it is value-driven rather than outcome-driven. The focus is on living in alignment with core values like health, self-respect, vitality, and longevity every day, rather than on reaching a specific numerical outcome that may or may not arrive. Each healthy meal becomes an act of self-respect. Each bout of enjoyable movement becomes a celebration of your body's functionality. Each mindful choice becomes a testament to your agency. The results are therefore experienced continuously, in real time, as improvements in your daily lived experience, not as a distant reward held hostage by a future weigh-in. This is the profound paradox of the journey. By quitting the obsessive pursuit of weight loss as an isolated goal, you create the precise conditions under which your body can naturally find its healthy equilibrium, and you may very well see the physical changes you originally sought. But they will have arrived as a byproduct, not as the sole prize. The real victory is the reclamation of your narrative. Conclusion: the invitation to begin. The path outlined here is not a quick fix. It is a gradual, deliberate process of editing the story you tell yourself about your health, your body, and your capacity for change. It asks you to exchange the familiar, if painful, scripts of perfectionism, punishment, and procrastination for the more courageous and compassionate language of progress, partnership, and presence. This journey begins not with a radical overhaul of your pantry or a punishing new gym regimen. It begins with a single, quiet act of quitting. Perhaps today, you quit weighing yourself for 1 week and instead note how your clothes feel. Perhaps you quit calling a food bad and simply observe its effects. Perhaps you quit comparing your walk around the neighborhood to someone else's marathon and instead feel gratitude for your legs that carry you. Each quit is a declarative sentence you write in your new story. String them together, and you will find you have authored a life not defined by lack, but enriched by capability and purpose. The scale, the mirror, the opinions of others. These become footnotes in a much richer text. The main narrative becomes one of growing strength, deepening self-knowledge, and an expanding sense of what is possible. If this story resonated with you, if you felt a sense of recognition or relief at the idea of letting go of these burdens, then you are exactly who this community is for. Here at Health Storytellers, we believe that the most powerful health transformation begins with a change in narrative. We are not just bodies to be optimized. We are stories to be written. If you want to keep writing this new story with us, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We turn complex health science into human-centered stories every week. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Which of these quits feels most challenging or most liberating to you? Your story inspires ours. Share this video with one person you think needs to hear this message today. You might just change the narrative of their journey. Remember, your health is not a number. It's a story. And you hold the pen. Thank you for listening. Until next time, be gentle with your story. Health Storytellers. Take care.